Let's shift the perspective a little bit, and Craig, I'm going to put you back on the spot because you were at Farmley. John Hartnett has already talked about Farmley, and that was a conference that talked about the diaspora and how to leverage those relationships. Has anything happened since Farmley that you see as, well, has anything happened?
Well, yeah, the financial system got worse. By the way, I think it's important to notice that Ireland has financial problems, and you can feel sorry for yourself here. I welcome any of you to come to Arizona, where I live in the United States, and we have exactly the same financial problems with exactly the same budget deficits and exactly the same budget cutting. What we talked about at Farmley was what Ireland was going to do when it grows up, and parallel conversation in the United States today is what the United States is going to do when it grows up. And the two countries are very, very similar. We both enjoy a nice standard of living today. We both want an increased standard of living, an increased economy for our kids and grandkids. And we're struggling how to make that happen. How does it work in terms of competition going forward? And what we talked about at Farmley was, in fact, what to do in that direction and what Ireland had to do. And we're having exactly the same conversations in the United States. And so I really enjoy this parallelism between the two. I go from depression in the United States to depression in Ireland, and back to the United States and then back to Ireland. But I really think it's not so much a time for depression as it's a time for action. And the action is pretty clear, because not only are we talking about it at Farmley today, I'm going to be back in Arizona on Friday talking about exactly the same subject and how Arizona digs its way out of a financial hole. The conversation we're having is identical. And by the way, it's not only going on in those two countries, but it's going on just about everywhere else in the world. I happen to participate in an activity very similar to ITLG, but it's in Russia. The Russians discovered that when the oil went from $150 a barrel to $70 a barrel, their arrogance evaporated as quickly as the price of a barrel of oil, and that they needed to do something new and different. And what they decided to do was, in fact, capitalize on innovation, commercialize their academic and research skills. That's exactly what we're talking about doing in the United States and in Arizona and California and everywhere. It's exactly what we're talking about in Ireland. And it's really an issue of who does the most, the fastest, with the most conviction, in the most substantial way, in the most sustained fashion. And so what came out of Farmley was kind of a run-of-the-mill education system, lack of interest of young kids in math and science. How are you going to be successful in the 21st century, the innovation century, if your kids don't know math, science, and engineering, which is the basis for economic growth? The lack of substantial investment in new ideas, research and development. How are you going to change those things? And by the way, that's exactly the conversation we're having in the United States. Our kids hate math and science. We still have the best universities in the world, and we do a great job educating the world at our universities, but not US kids in those topics. The government investment in R&D has decreased by half if you measure it as a percent of GDP. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Thank God you guys have a low corporate tax rate. Don't change your tax rate at your peril if you change it. But what I like going on since Farmley is the dialogue and start the action. Let's make it easier for kids to major in math and science in primary and secondary and get them into the tertiary education system. Let's continue to grow research at the universities, grow innovation centers like we've seen today, like you see in Dublin. And let's get on with our life. You know, it doesn't do any good for any of us to be depressed because we're all in the same boat. The object is to get the boat to shore and to start to build houses and businesses and new things.
Any other comments on Farmley follow-up?
Can I add one?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to correct him. I was misquoted informally. The Irish Times said I said that Irish universities were a bunch of insular, isolated ivory tower silos. Actually, what I said is the Irish universities can't afford to be a bunch of isolated ivory tower silos. You need to work together. The country is too small, way too small to have factions. And it's really good to see that University of Limerick and Galway and Trinity and UCD are all getting together, like everyone went behind Munster last night, to make this a winning situation. And in fact, as I had mentioned earlier, that you cannot save your way out of a recession. You actually have to invest in the bright young minds that are going to make a difference. We got an abject lesson in chaos theory from the financial sector over the last few years. But the real entrepreneurs are these creative people who are coming up right now with the ideas for the jobs that haven't even been dreamt of. Dr. Love here, that's Graham Love from the Science Foundation, put together an incredible video of the creativity that's come out of investment in basic research in Science Foundation Ireland. But one, to me, of the most telling slides in that presentation was the one that said the 10 top jobs today weren't even rating less than 10 years ago. So we have to be awful careful not to be prescriptive in where we put our funding, because in fact, as Wayne Gretzky said, and you know who Wayne Gretzky is, he doesn't play for Munster. He's actually a hockey player. He says the good hockey players go to where the puck is. The great hockey players go to where the puck is going to be. And that's where the great minds that are going to come up with the technologies of the future are today. They're the smart people in the universities, applying to Science Foundation Ireland, getting funding and making the creativity that's going to catapult us out of the hole we're in.